The following episode of Dave's Video Graveyard contains spoilers and naughty words. Listener discretion is advised.
Have you ever bought or rented a videotape that wasn't quite right? It may have been a pirate copy.
Ratings advice. Use it. It's on every...
We're going streaking!
Dave's Video Graveyard.
That guy in a little coat.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
I'm not a smart man.
Shut up! One tubby.
What's wrong with him?
My first thought would be alive.
Why so serious?
Wise man say forgiveness is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza.
Hail to the king, baby.
Hey, Ma! The meatloaf! We want it now! The meatloaf!
Of all the radio shows in the world, this is definitely one of them. Dave's Video Graveyard on 100.5 WOWFM.
Okay, you people sit tight, hold the fort, and keep the home fires burning. And if we're not back by dawn, call the president.
It is once again time for Dave's Video Graveyard. A massive pleasure to be with you, whatever you may be doing on this unseasonably warm Monday night. I say unseasonably because it's been so cold for the first part of summer. I forgot what cold weather was. Anyway, forget about cold weather because it has been a small week of movies because I haven't really got around to watching that much. I did revisit Ali G in the House, and it's a good thing it's not current, but it is a fantastic film if you pretend it isn't 2021. Now, it is time this evening for a guest choice special. We have gone back down to the Riot City Wrestling Academy and picked out... We tried to grab all of the good guys we could. Unfortunately, we have got, from the other end of the spectrum, we are joined by Tyler Daniels, The Difference. Dude, how are you?
I'm very well, Dave. It's a pleasure, obviously, a massive pleasure. I mean, some of that pleasure is even mine, Dave.
Nice, very nice.
There you go. Look, thank you so much. Really looking forward to being here in the great. Love what you've done with the place. You've gone all out, obviously. So, you know, I just can't believe it's taken you so long to invite me here.
Well, you know, I've got a workshop and I've got to get up to the level because, you know, you're not going to go out day one and get, you know, the peak of an interview. So I had to work my way up, and it's finally, I think I've finally unlocked the achievement that is Tyler Daniels. Now, you slipped me a piece of paper as we went on air this evening, suggesting that this evening we call it Tyler's Video Graveyard.
Well, why wouldn't you want to call it Tyler? I thought this was about ratings, Dave. I mean, why wouldn't you call it that?
That's it. And also suggesting to Photoshop me out of the photo and replace me with just...
I understand.
I know. These are all great suggestions, and definitely for the future they will be considered. Now, you join us. You are a professional wrestler, currently with Riot City Wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
How did you fall into that line of life?
Oh, it's one of those things, Dave. It's growing up as a kid and seeing these larger-than-life superheroes beat the living hell out of each other and just sitting in awe in front of the TV going, I want to do that. And it's one of those things that hooks you as a kid, and when I finally had the opportunity here in Australia to find where I could train to do it, I kind of had to go, I think I can do this. If I don't try it, I will always regret it. And let's face it, it's Tyler Daniels. It was never going to fail.
Nice. How did you actually get into? Tell us the real story.
Mm-hmm.
So you've seen these men on TV smashing each other, larger than life.
Yep.
You've looked in the mirror and gone, I know someone that would fit in with those guys. What's the first step you took?
Well, it's really interesting. I actually started a little bit later in life, and it was around about circa 2003, thereabouts. There was a show being hosted here in Adelaide, and I saw the poster for it, and me being me, I kind of went to the promoter and went, where do you get these guys who actually perform? I actually want to know about this. And he said, they all come from a place called the Monster Factory. Contact this man called Cole Devani. I went, okay, I don't know what that place is or who this guy is, but that's step one. And I rang this number. I spoke to Cole Devani. I think we had about a 45-minute conversation. I think I got about 4 words in that 45 minutes, but he invited me to come down. So I came down and they threw me around for a while and kind of went, this guy knows how to fall over and he keeps getting back up, stupidly doesn't stay down, and that was step one.
Yeah, right. Very nice. Now, obviously, regardless of how the product is now, because I grew up, a massive, literally and metaphorically, a massive fan of wrestling, and the Attitude Era, the Monday Night Wars, that was the golden era for me just because of my age.
Yeah.
Who were some of the names that you saw that you were like, oh, this is amazing?
Well, it's really interesting. And as you will ascertain from not only when I talk about wrestling, but also my choice of movies and characters therein, I have an affinity for the bad guys. So for me, I would see Hulk Hogan, and that's great, but Roddy Piper was the man.
Amen.
So from WrestleMania 1, you had obviously Piper and Hogan was the big thing, but then you had the turn with Paul Orndorff.
Yep.
Which I'm like, oh, that's a shame because Paul was great. And then Paul turned on Hogan, and I'm like, that's the best thing I've ever seen. But for me, it was really about, you'd see obviously those guys, and they were just larger than life, as I said. A little bit after that, you had someone like a Bret Hart who came along, and I kind of looked at Hogan and went, this guy's 6 foot, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'm never going to be that size, so it wasn't relatable. And then I saw this guy, Bret Hart, and I'm like, you're probably the sort of size I could grow. Actually, that means maybe I could possibly do it. So I had some... Paul Orndorff was one of my absolute favourites. Roddy Piper, because could just talk as well as do everything, etc. So that's from that era. Then, you had, as I said, when Bret Hart came in, etc., there was, oh my God, there's a chance there's smaller guys, and he was a real technical aspect of it. And then from there you had your Shawn Michaels, which is just, another level. But beyond that, you had this other thing called the NWA and then WCW, which was kind of this foreign thing you didn't see much of here.
Yep.
But I was a huge magazine collector, so I would get the magazines here in Australia, which talked about Memphis and talked about Atlanta and talked about Florida and had all these different at the time territories, and I'm like, oh my God, who's this Ric Flair guy and Dusty Rhodes, and then there was all these Lex Lugers and Stings. And
I remember learning so much about the extended wrestling universe with WOW magazine, the WOW magazine, which was World of Wrestling, and it started out when I first started reading it. They were getting readers to send in photos they'd taken of at shows of wrestlers to use in their magazine because they just didn't have any money behind them. And over the years, it got such a big following that by the last few mags that they released, it was like full gloss, like professional photos. Like, it was great to follow, but it was one of those things where, because obviously we both were fans before the days of like kayfabe and everything, like, and the way it is now, and it was just amazing because we also didn't have the internet for the most part.
Absolutely.
So you were reading, like, I used to laugh because like WOW would interview wrestlers totally in character.
Mm-hmm.
And you would just read it going, oh my goodness, that's insane. That like, but then you'd see like an awards night or something. And I always remember this photo, and it was of Steve Blackman and Kem Shamrock at like in their tuxedos standing next to each other, but it was right in the middle of like a TV like feud that they had going on, and my little kid brain just could not handle. I'm like, what is going on? Why are they together and not fighting? So insane. So you started out with Cole. Where did you go from there?
Look, from there, I wrestled at what was Joint Promotions Wrestling, MPW at the time, and then that sort of morphed into a couple of different things, and then it morphed into Snake Pit Wrestling and PWSA, and then about 5 years ago, I kind of went, well, how much time have I got left, and what else do I want to do? And I was I knew the Basso brothers had done since day one. A real interesting story is Chris Basso and I actually debuted on the very same show. So,
oh wow!
He was
and Mimic.
Yeah, he was match 1 and I was match 2, and so it's kind of there's always been that sort of bond in that sense, and knew the boys, and I'd gone to see some of their shows because within Adelaide Wrestling, like that branch that all came from like the Monster Factory, it's kind of been the foundation power.
Yeah,
throughout
100%.
So, it's a community, and those boys, we know each other, and those guys who can say we've got heritage that come from the Monster Factory, there's always that similarity and bonds from that. So I kind of went down and watched some of their shows and kind of went, yeah, you know what? Let's see what else I can do. And I think I know what I do pretty well from one position. Can I move companies, and is it going to work? Or am I just kidding myself? And so I had a bit of a chat with them, and they said, absolutely, come on in, see what we can do. And from there, I think for the last 5 years or so, I've been working with those boys and thoroughly enjoying it. So,
Nice.
Yeah.
You were given ultimate power to book. Living or dead, who are you facing off against?
Me personally?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Look, that's really unfair, as good as I know I am. Look, I don't want to bury talent here. No, the reality is, who do I think I could actually give a good match to and actually show some Look, as I said, I grew up with some all-time classics for the 80s and 90s. I would, I'd probably say Bret Hart. The guy was never the biggest personality-wise, charisma, not the best guy in that sense.
No.
But just to be able to put a story together and the technical aspect.
One of the greatest technical wrestlers, but yeah, he was a block of chalk
when
it came to personality.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in saying that, I think so much of my early work was, I'll say, modelled after someone like a Bret Hart in that sense. That technical aspect of no wasted motion and meaning what you do was always kind of my philosophy. So, look, and who wouldn't want to say they've actually wrestled Bret Hart? I mean, I could say Ric Flair, I could say, I could say Steve Austin, those sorts of things. But, for me, I guess when I was really formative around that, that Bret was kind of the guy.
Now, 2020 is the year that fell apart for everything. However, 2021, best case scenario.
Yep.
What is your goal in wrestling?
To make it to the end of 2021.
Nice. Yeah.
Look, and I'll be brutally honest. It was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I sort of sat back and went, I'm probably closer to the end than I am the beginning. So how much have I got left? And I sort of went, I reckon I've got maybe a couple of years left, and I'll always go. I said I'll go until my body physically can't go, because I'd hate to say no, I'm pulling up stumps, and then 5 years down the track go, I reckon I could have got a couple more years out of it, So
you'd hate to regret, because to use an example that is dear to the show, friend of the show, back in the EPW days, down in Cosgrove Hall or one of those places, Cloverley Hall.
That's the one.
I met Havoc for the first time.
Yeah.
And at that point, he was done. He was like, I'm too old. I'm not in shape. It's time to give it away. And we're talking about the man that's in the shape of his life right now, and has just won 2 RCW, I believe, Match of the Year and Wrestler of the Year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because, again, Havoc and I are both out of the Monster Factory. So I've known Havoc since the first day I walked into the Monster Factory. He was there before me. So, and we're kind of the same sort of, I'll say, ilk, to be polite to both of us. And we both say, we're old men, we're too old for this. Why do we keep doing it? And it's funny, we were actually at the awards night, as you said, on the weekend. And Havoc and I were having a conversation. He goes, I've been away over the last month when everything shut down. He goes, now I'm second guessing, am I too old to come back? Am I over it? Do I want to do this? And then he goes out and he wins Male Wrestler of the Year. And I walked up to him and said, is that the spark you needed? And he looked, he went, yeah, either that or I can now say I'm retiring on top. And so, but
nice.
To my point before, like I sort of said, I reckon I've got a couple of years. I'll go until the body gives out. That was about 5 years ago, and somehow through Scotch tape and just sheer good luck, the body's still going. So
some very strong sticky tape.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, let's jump into our first song this evening. We'll come back and we'll do the High Fidelity Quiz. This is 100.5 WOW FM.
Oh, are they psychos? Or?
They look like psychos? Is that what they look like? They were vampires. Psychos do not explode when sunlight hits them. I don't give up how crazy they are.
Talking movies on the radio. This is Dave's Video Graveyard on 100.5 WOW FM.
Only after dark.
It is 100.5 WOW FM, Dave's Video Graveyard. A little bit of Metallica to start the evening. Now, we do have some listener suggestions / questions / feedback to go over before we continue. We've heard from one Mr. Sean Fuster, and he has let us know that, firstly, the quality of guests on DVG from last week to this week have almost gone in a straight line down to the ground. His second suggestion is he can't believe that Tyler Daniels has been in RCW for 5 years because it feels more like 50 in a bad way. And his final comment was his 2021 goal should be to make it further up Rocky Monero's posterior than he already is. So that's from Sean Fuster. Thank you, Sean. Your right of reply, Tyler.
Thank you. I was waiting for that, Dave. Well, it's interesting after listening to that he has any credibility whatsoever, because apparently he's some particular journalist and people listen to him. After listening to that, Who the hell would listen to Sean Fuster's commentary? Opinion pieces are not your strong point, mate. Clearly, stick to what you know best. Wait, hang on. What is it that you do know best? I mean, let's face it. I carried you for 12 months on the commentary desk. You could barely keep up, and that was supposed to be your number one. It was only a fill-in for me, mate, and you were still so far behind the parade you couldn't hear the band, my friend.
Very nice, very nice. And that goes out to one Mr. Sean Fuster this evening. Now, a big part of DVG is the High Fidelity quiz. It was stolen from another WOWFM show, so shout out to High Fidelity because that's where I stole it from. So, what was your local video store growing up?
My local video store was Alpha Video in Ingle Farm.
Right.
However, my favourite video store was Atlantic Video in Enfield. Main North Road.
I've got to say, the cult of Atlantic grows week by week here on DVG. Everyone, no one was local. I think Shanks, when we had him on, he was travelling down to Semaphore, away from his local suburb, just to go to the local Atlantic.
Yeah, my Atlantic was on,
Main North Road?
Yeah. For 2 reasons. As a wrestling fan, those guys got the tapes before anyone else, and for a long time were the only ones in Adelaide that would carry them.
Back in the Coliseum home video days?
Absolutely. But they also carried some NWA and some AWA stuff as well.
Yep.
So, yeah, that was where you could get some diversity. Now, that said, I also, from a very young age, found another mate of mine, and we became tape traders. So we had a contact in Melbourne that could get us tapes from the States as well. So I've got still a VHS catalogue at home of these old-school dubbed NTSC to PAL versions of everything. But that place, for A, the wrestling tapes, and B, they actually imported, legitimately from the States, Cherry Coke.
Wow.
So you could buy it by the can. So I'd go down, I'd get a couple of videos and a couple of cans of that, and I'd be set.
That does sound like an amazing evening. You're 10 years old. What is your favourite TV show, ice cream, junk food? You don't look like you've had either of those things sitting in front of me. Book and toy.
Mate, I'm going to put a caveat here right now. And as you saw with the first question, I don't have a single answer for this. There's multiples of all this because it's so hard just to limit this, Dave. You've made it very tough. 10 years old, and you're going to have to bear with me because my parents, as I've realised, were really not that responsible as adults.
Hey, so you're sitting in the right room right now.
So, look, for me, I thought about it, and one that just stood out to me was the Goodies, because that was a staple for me at that point.
Yep.
I'm going to bundle it as the Saturday Cartoon Marathon on Channel 9, just start to finish with stuff like The Devlins and Space Ghost and Inch High Private Eye.
So all the Hanna-Barbera stuff.
All the stuff that was in there was great. So, but beyond that, Scooby-Doo, Looney Tunes for me and everything in that. And also the young ones.
Nice.
So at 10 years old, there's no way I should have been watching it, but I actually had taped it all off of the ABC, so I actually had it on VHS. And I'd long played it, so I had them all on one tape and could back-to-back the whole lot.
I had VHS tape. There was a compilation poorly edited.
Yep.
So it would go episode of Young Ones that I stayed up late enough on a Friday to hit record.
Yep.
The following week was about 10 minutes of the big gig, followed by Young Ones. And then each week I would add to that. But there was always, because I had to go to bed at the same time, there was always the amount of the big gig in there.
Yeah.
So,
and look,
what a great choice.
Look, there's so many great ones that I didn't even put in there. There's stuff like Fast Forward and The Comedy Company, which I'm a massive comedy buff as well. So for me, stuff like that was amazing. You wanted to know about ice cream, junk food, books and toys and stuff. So really quickly, ice cream at that age is Buffalo Bill.
Right. Yep.
Was there
Classic.
anything else? Was there anything else? Junk food, a Wendy's hot dog, or back in the day when you could get from Hungry Jack's a real bacon double cheeseburger, which was like 3 times the size they are now, those things. Books, I was thinking at that age, and the only thing I can remember reading at that age was The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That is totally fine.
That's the only thing I can remember reading at that age. As for toys, it's going to be no surprise to those who know me, the LJN wrestling figures, and I had huge amounts of Lego. So, that's definitely it. So,
nice. Now, who goes on your Mount Rushmore of actors or actresses?
Mate, this is one of the toughest things going around, because I went, I have to split this to male and female, is firstly, and...
No, we just put that in there to pander.
Oh, mate,
Do what you want.
Mate, I had to put it in there, I had to split it, because I'm like, and there's so many, like I went probably the 4 that probably appeal to me, not that they're the best actors.
No, that's fine, because
I'm like...
I've got Tom Jane on mine, so
yeah, okay.
It doesn't necessarily warrant anyone else's response.
No, that's fair. Look, for me, male, and that's just, I think, of the last kind of generation. Leonardo DiCaprio's up there for me, just because there's so many stellar performances.
I think he's our generation's Tom Hanks, and the torch was passed with Catch Me If You Can.
I'm so glad you did that. It's as if you knew what I was going to say, because my next one's Tom Hanks.
Nice.
And the fact that they got to do Catch Me As You Can is just the best crossover.
With Spielberg as well.
There
so
you go.
It's perfect.
Robert De Niro.
Yep.
Just because of his breadth and depth. Anything from Taxi Driver to the father in Meet the Fockers, I mean, what a range and everything in between. Johnny Depp, just because as he's got older, the weirder he's got every character. When you see him start from 21 Jump Street to doing just the Edward Scissorhands to Jack Sparrow to just everything in between, it's just everything is so unique. So, but there are so many that could have been on there. The Dustin Hoffmans, Morgan Freemans, Gary Oldmans, Jack Nicholson's, Robert Williams, it just goes on and on and on. Females. Cate Blanchett.
Yep.
I've chucked in Kathy Bates.
I can see it, yep. Range as well, like you were mentioning the range.
Sarah Paulson. And this is where, for me, if you know American Horror Story, her range, because she plays a different character in every series, but is amazing in all of them. So for me, blows me away every time I see her.
Yep.
And just sentimentally, not the best, but I've chucked in Elizabeth Shue.
Okay, nice.
And the reason being, Karate Kid and Back to the Future.
She's a bit also the constant application of her skills. She's as good in The Boys as she was in The Karate Kid.
And Adventures in Babysitting and on and on and on. So I've thrown her in there with, the Judi Dench's, Sandra Bullock's, Jennifer Aniston's, Helena Bonham Carter, all the, just so many. As I said, the ones that affected me in their roles.
Villain Visage has just messaged in saying, Kathy Bates and Sarah Paulson, finally a guest with good taste.
The villain knows what's good. She's always known that, so I appreciate that.
Very nice. Now, pretend it's not 2020 because this question was ruined last year.
Okay.
Would you prefer to watch a movie at home or at the cinemas?
It's funny you say that because I went at the moment. I would be gagging just to get to a cinema and actually spend it. But it really depends on the scenario and the movie. So depending on who I'm with, what it is, what the event is, I can very easily set up at home and be really set in there. But I do love the cinematic experience. I'd pick cinema if I can. But again, some movies are just made for cinema.
Movies are my comfort food. So it's a double-edged sword for me, that question, because I love a rewatch. I still get the magic from movies I loved when I was a kid. So,
for sure.
I get in the mood where I'm like, I'm going to watch Demolition Man or I'm going to watch Terminator 2 for the feeling that I get from those films.
Yep.
So that leans towards home. But then there's something about even a shitty cinema. There's just something magical about being in a dirty cinema watching a movie.
But that said, some of the older style, dingier cinemas have got more character when you sit and watch
100%.
them. So I'm on board, Dave. I'm on board.
I watched Fury Road twice.
Yep.
One was in a really nice cinema. One was in a terrible cinema.
Sure.
Amazing.
Yeah, right.
Just the terrible cinema was so much better. Just it owned that movie.
Absolutely.
What's your food of choice when you go to the cinemas?
There is only one. It's a choc top ice cream.
Oh, nice. Bit of a swerve. I was thinking you were going to go with the vanilla choice of popcorn.
No, but you can have popcorn at home anytime.
100%.
Choc top is cinematic food.
And I know you wouldn't know it from looking at me because I do look like both a power lifter and a long distance runner.
Correct.
But popcorn's an anytime food for me. It's not a cinema food.
Well, that's the thing. I will sit down and I will happily gorge a bag of Jelly Babies plus, something, a block of chocolate, whatever. But Choc Top's ice creams, it's cinema every day of the week.
Nice. Which, if you could choose one of the following to watch for the rest of your life, you could choose comedy, horror, or drama. What are you picking?
I'm going to answer that with a movie. Shaun of the Dead.
Nice.
Reason being, and ultimately my answer is comedy, because if it's done properly, and Shaun of the Dead is done so brilliantly, it is a comedy which combines great drama and has amazing horror.
100%. And that's also my reason, because with comedy, you get to have horror and you get to have drama without it taking away.
Absolutely.
Whereas with drama, if you lean too much into horror, it's not a drama anymore.
Correct.
Too much into comedy, it's not a drama anymore. And same with horror, whereas comedy is all-encompassing.
And let's face it, there are just days and times where you need to switch off, turn your brain off, and just be entertained. So I say thank you, Will Ferrell, for that.
Nice. Who would play you in your biopic?
This is a tough one. Real tough one. Biopic. I reckon younger days, I'm going Daniel Radcliffe.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
Older days, I'm going probably either Colin Farrell or Gerard Butler.
I would see the Gerard Butler movie in a second. I definitely see both those picks.
Yeah, I would love to say Tom Hardy, just because of his intensity and his ability. The look is just not going to work, unfortunately. So,
Nice. What film didn't get a sequel that deserves one?
That's tough. And I say it's tough because any film that didn't get a sequel, good films that didn't get a sequel don't need one because they wrapped everything up.
100%,
They wrapped it all up. However, I thought long and hard and I went, what would I love to see as a sequel? The Goonies.
Nice.
And I don't care if that's the next day or 5 years later. What happened to Chunk?
Yeah.
What happened to the whole cast? Like,
Is he still truffle shuffling?
Correct.
Like a Cobra Kai series, but with them all as
absolutely. What inventions did Data actually get to work? Like, all of those things.
Good call. In your biopic, what song is in the main titles?
Yeah, I reckon Could Have Been Me by the Struts.
Right.
However, I think probably the most apt is Don't Stop Me Now by Queen.
Nice. Very nice. Very nice. Which movie freaked you out the most as a child?
Well, there was this VHS porno I found, Dave, that I just wasn't ready for at that age.
Right.
Yep, no. Apart from that one...
All jokes aside, we are the generation that grew up finding it.
Correct. It wasn't... I couldn't just take my phone out of my pocket and have this instantaneous just plethora of...
That is it. You couldn't watch it in every room of your house. You had to find it in a bush at the park.
Yep. And then you had to wait till everyone else was out of the house.
Yes.
And have I got 15 minutes here to do that? And don't get it caught in the VHS
Back
player.
in the day, I used to sneak it from a hiding spot.
Yeah.
Put it on, watch it, do what I had to do, put it back in the hiding spot, redust the area to make sure you could not see.
Yep.
Put all the bricks, because, you had to step on all the secret bricks to make it rise up.
Indeed.
Do all that. Nowadays, I can't even close the browser. I'm just like, I got to do something the next morning. I'm like, whoops.
Oh, that's what I was up to last night. Look, it's one of those things, and you are right. We are that ilk, we are that generation. But at that age, that as a kid, what really freaked me out was Christine.
Right. Okay.
And that was, again, saw it way too young. But my mum was a huge Stephen King. It still is a huge Stephen King fan. So I've got a massive plethora of books and movie knowledge of Stephen King stuff. And I just remember, and there was a few things in that, that was, there was some weird stuff in there that I just, at that age, I wasn't ready for.
Yep.
As simple as the main character's name, Cunningham, being conveniently changed to something Elsingham.
Yes, yep.
And I'm like, what was that word? And I didn't know what it was. I just knew it wasn't good. And the other side to that is, when they first bust the car up, who takes a shit on the dashboard of a car? What is that all about? And that's
a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, but then, that doesn't even then go to the fact that you've got this car that just kills people and then resets itself. And you see the good guy main character actually transform into the bad guy to be the anti-hero that wins.
Fantastic.
So who would have thought that appealed to me, hey?
Yeah, I know. So off-brand and everything.
Isn't it?
Which, other than The Goonies, which TV show or movie from your childhood would you reboot?
Look,
we're not talking sequel.
No,
we're talking new property.
It's interesting you say that because I thought long and hard, and I originally went, "Oh, that's the Goonies again," because I'd love to see, and it goes back to the generational thing. Imagine rebooting that now with the concept of how would you play that out to have a group of kids. And let's face it, as soon as they go underground, I'm cutting out all of their cellular activities. So phones are out. So how do you do that? So that was where I went. The other one I did have as a backup, though, and it's that whole generational thing, was the Wonder Years.
Nice.
Because you think, back then it was like the late 80s looking back at the 60s. How would we do that now in the 2020s looking back at, say, the 80s? Or whatever?
80s, yeah.
That reboot of that. How?
Well, that's also what I love so much about the Goldbergs.
Yeah.
Because it pretty much was that.
This is true too, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Obviously, it's not Christine, but if you could drive one vehicle from any movie, what would it be?
There is only one, Dave. It's the DeLorean from Back to the Future. Do you know why, though, Dave?
Because it's their answer most commonly given ever.
Yeah, but beyond that, what's the reason for that?
Because it's not the 89 Batman?
Nah.
And because it's unlimited in its application, because you can time travel.
you can go back to anywhere else whenever you want to drive any other vehicle you choose.
Good call.
That's why. It's like that's the third wish from the genie, right? The third wish is I want 3 more wishes.
Yeah.
Same thing. If I have the DeLorean, I can go any time I want to drive anything I choose.
I always wondered why they didn't go back in time 5 minutes and get a second DeLorean.
Mate, if we want to start pulling holes in the space-time continuum, Dave, we're going to be here on a very different show.
Very different. If you could add your favourite fictional character to any film, who would you choose and what would the movie be?
Again, long and hard because there's so many great ones. But I went, how could I transplant a fictional character into something that would be entertaining? So I have taken Leslie Chow from The Hangover.
Wow, yeah.
And I'm transplanting him into any Bond film you want. So at the start of it, he is the villain, which you come to love, who ends up working with Bond to actually defeat the real villain by the end of the movie.
That is incredible. To see him offsiding.
Could you imagine that, though?
Who's your Bond?
Connery's the iconic classic, so probably that. Look.
I was a fat kid in the 90s, so it's got to be Brosnan for me.
Okay. Yeah, look, I think for me it's always Connery. There's something about Roger Moore was too smooth for himself. Daniel Craig's great, but I don't see Daniel Craig as Bond almost.
I think he is Jason Bourne.
That's
more
thank
than
you.
James
yeah,
Bond.
I'm with you. I see him more in that aspect, and maybe that's the evolution of the Bond character. However, I think Connery just exemplifies all of it.
Nice. Now, speaking of finding videos in the park, which actor or actress do you find so attractive that you'd wear out a VHS tape? This question is inspired by my childhood copy of From Dusk Till Dawn that now looks like a barcode.
Oh, amazing.
So, yeah, who goes on your tape?
Look, aside from a highlight tape of Tyler Daniels.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. And it's interesting you talked about your Dusk to Dawn tape because when we talk about my favourite movies, one of those was a similar thing.
Yep.
Which I shouldn't have had this copy of it, but it was amazing. So we'll get to that. We'll put a pin in that one. Mate, there's so much. I could legitimately say I'm sure I wore out tapes of both Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone.
Yep.
You know, Rocky, Rambo, Terminators, even stuff, Total Recall, Running Man, Red Heat, you name it. Who'd have thought I was a fan of those guys growing up? The greatest montages of all time in Rocky, etc.
It is so funny. Still to this day, in my everyday life, if I carry something over my shoulder, instantly it is the start of Commando with the log.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's in every boy that's seen that movie's brain whenever they carry something over the shoulder. And anytime I carry something under my arm, it's the roses from Terminator 2. It's just the Arnie school of carrying stuff and looking cool. That's what's in everyone's head, and I don't care if they say it's not true, because it is.
And anytime you need a pickup, you play a Rocky montage.
Oh, 100%.
You don't even have to watch it. You just hear it and you know it.
It became a trope, but it also is the most effective way of storytelling in film.
Absolutely.
Show it, don't tell it.
Now, with that said, I have looked at it and gone, look, I'm sure I wore those tapes out back in the day. These days, probably someone like an Eva Mendes.
Nice, yep.
A Margot Robbie. Even a Rachel.
I can see it.
A Rachel Adams.
Okay.
And I'm a big Emma Stone fan as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, any of those, or look, if I could get a combined tape of those, maybe one night.
Compilation.
I'm just thinking maybe there was a secret pillow fight that was happening
so you'd direct. You'd want your own tape.
Well, why not? I know. Look,
That's
we all know that's what all girls do when they get together and have sleepovers. It's negligees and pillow fights. We know that, Dave.
It is. It's not just in that scene in Greece.
Never.
It's real life.
Correct.
Awesome. Let's jump back into the music. That is the High Fidelity Quiz. Shout out to Shannon. You can check out his show here on WOWFM. Let's get back into music before we go through the 10 favourite movies of Tyler Daniels.
People think they're seeing ghosts. And they call these bozos who conveniently show up to deal with the problem with a fake electronic light show.
Everything was fine with our system until the power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
They caused an explosion.
Is this true? Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
This is Dave's Video Graveyard.
It is DVG. We are talking with Tyler Daniels all about his 10 favourite films, and it is time to flick the never-ending middle finger at Kevin Costner's Wide Earp, because it's the same year, it's 1993, and the greatest, nay, The greatest cowboy movie of all time has been chosen by Tyler Daniels. We are talking about 1993's Tombstone, directed by George Cosmatos. However, after he passed away, it was revealed that Kurt Russell directed this film pretty much. Because I believe George was known in the industry. He worked a lot with Stallone, and he was just a yes man. So any actor that had Mr. Cosmatos, I believe it's pronounced, anyone that had him as a director was allowed to just make all their own calls, and he would say yes, and he would direct the scene as was. This movie should have fallen apart. On paper, it did many, many times. However, it's been revealed by many members of the cast, including Val Kilmer, that Kurt Russell is the reason this movie did so well. Why did you pick this classic?
Oh, well, you've just summed it up. It is a classic, firstly. There are so many amazing performances. And look, for me, there is just some outstanding character development and work in that. And one for me is Val Kilmer's character. Doc Holliday, if Tyler Daniels was transported back to the Wild West, that is Tyler Daniels' Doc Holliday.
So you're saying that the first thing you do if you time traveled is die of tuberculosis?
After raising absolute hell and being as cool as anyone has ever been while doing it, absolutely.
I still haven't managed to say you're a daisy if you do in my real life, but it is a goal in life to do.
But look, here's the thing, and I'll give you a little bit of insight. So what's his most famous line? If it's not that, what's his most famous line?
I'm your huckleberry.
Right, okay, so here's the scoop. The reality is he probably never actually said, I'm your huckleberry.
Right.
But what he did say is even cooler than that.
I'm your huckleberry. Does that not translate to I'm the man for the job, or I'm the guy that will fight you, or something along those lines?
Kind of. However,
because there was the rumor that it wasn't, that it was I'm your hucklebear.
Close.
Right.
I'm your hucklebearer.
Hucklebearer, which is the handle of a coffin.
Absolutely. Which, if you think about it, is even cooler than... I mean, I'm your huckleberry just for no other reason is that's awesome.
Yes.
However, when you look at that, I'm your hucklebearer. I'm the guy who will carry
your
coffin.
I will kill you and then I'll carry your coffin. That is insanely great line.
There you go. So that's what I'm saying. So the guy is cooler than you thought he was, and he was already the coolest thing walking the earth. So for me, Tombstone... But beyond that, it's just the amazing story of, let's face it, the Earps and Doc were not good guys.
No.
They were just the better guys at the time.
This was also set in the time where they had raised so much hell as lawmen that they're like, let's go retire anonymously because we've got a lot of people after us.
And they went back and forth between the good guys and bad guys, but it's always the concept of if you just do the same thing to someone worse than you, you're suddenly the good guy in that. But there's and there is also for me, there is the kinship between Doc and Wyatt, that is for me just spectacular. And that's played out between Kilmer and Russell spectacularly. So Tombstone is up there for all of those reasons. And
it's actually in the history books that, because there's the famous scene where they're at the stream at the end, and it's, I believe it's Powell's booth and Kurt Russell's Earp. They walk towards each other in a gunfight. And even though all these rounds go off, Wyatt Earp never got hit. In fact, he spent his entire life not even being touched by a bullet. That's one of the historical facts of this film. And the second guy from the Cowboys that still got shot, but he crawled to a farmhouse, and before he succumbed to his injuries in real life, he told the story of he just kept shooting, and it did not hit him. And it's unheard of because of how close they were together. Because you even watch it in the film, and it's quite jarring because they're about 15 feet apart, just pointed gun points.
Absolutely. Different time, Dave. Different time.
That's it. And any movie where Sam Elliott plays a cowboy that's not the coolest cowboy there, that's a huge thing.
I remember back in the day, one of my partners about many, many years ago had a crush on Sam Elliott, and I'm like, he's old enough to be your dad, and she's like, but he's a cool old guy. And as I've got older, I've gone, I get it.
I see it watching Roadhouse. I'm like,
So, that was exactly right, yeah.
Because that was his peak years of
but even,
haven't washed, but just look like I'd kick her out.
Still.
Charlton Heston, classic cowboy in this. Jason Priestley from 90210.
Yeah, I know.
Not so much a classic cowboy, but he's great in this. What a cast. This is absolutely stellar, and there is no question why this is better than White Earp from Kevin Costner.
No, there is no, absolutely.
And
no
you hear behind the scenes, Costner's camp were doing a lot to derail this movie as well. Didn't matter because no one wants to see you dance with wolves. Kurt Russell shaved every night of this film and just grew the moustache while he ate breakfast every day.
Absolutely.
Because he's my Mount Rushmore is just 3 Kurt Russells and Thomas Jane on the end, not knowing why he's there.
Yeah. No, look, fair call, and it's tough because Kurt Russell's there, and I love the segue you said before about the directing with Stallone, because let's face it, Tango and Cash.
Yes,
same
story.
Exactly, but how good, how bad / amazing is that film?
Any movie that features Kurt Russell dressing in drag to get out of a situation, I'm all for it. Michael Biehn is also insanely good in this movie, given all the troubles he had around aliens, because he was having a lot of personal troubles. He nails this movie.
Everyone.
This is testament to the acting in this film. Even the bad guys are so charismatic.
Yeah.
You take them out of this film and put them in a completely different cowboy film, there's your hero. There's your anti-hero.
Oh, yeah. And that's what I said before. The character work of every character in this brings something to the table. There's no one filling in a bit part. They all have meaning. They're all there for a reason, intent. Absolutely. Top to bottom. Just so good.
Yeah. Even Thomas Hayden Church is fantastic in this movie. And he's boring in everything. Awesome. So that is your first choice this evening. We'll jump back into a little more music. Don't forget, you can join in the conversation. Join in on our social medias. Look for Dave's Video Graveyard on WOWFM on Instagram, Facebook, or anywhere that you go on the internet. One of the hubs. Just look for us. You'll find us. This is DVG.
But I think that the music was a little loud.
Are you afraid of it?
No. I just don't like techno.
You would if you had robot ears.
All the movies, none of the knowledge. This is Dave's Video Graveyard on 100.5 WOW FM.
I hate your face.
Did you say something?
And another quick shout out to Trent Cuccarelli as well as Sean Fuster for last week's first ever episode of Quiz Your Pants. And if you were listening, you would know that Blazing Saddles, the next choice from Tyler Daniels, was the first film to ever feature audible flatulence, which is just the chef's kiss of all filmmaking. Why did you choose this film?
Just because, and here's the thing, it's the impact it had at the time of when I first saw it as a kid watching it, and I have gone back and watched this, and I've watched it recently, and I only saw the first half, and I think I fell asleep or something, and I realised how much I don't remember this film now.
Yeah.
But I still know it had such an impact. But I think, you were saying before, forget it's 2021, because there's so much about this that I just don't know you can do anymore.
Oh, my goodness.
But
that's pretty much all of Mel Brooks's career.
Of course it is. Yeah, that's right. I mean, when you extend that to Spaceballs, etc., so much stuff you couldn't do today. But Blazing Saddles and, having a black sheriff that hijacks himself and, kidnaps himself and holds the rest of the town ransom for that. But that, and Gene Wilder, a classic and such a good performance by Gene Wilder. And who doesn't like seeing a horse on gallows about to get hung, to be fair.
100%. And I do love that was a leftover. I love that character reoccurred in several of his movies, including Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Correct.
It's the same guy.
Yep.
It's just, I believe he was in Young Frankenstein as well. He was in a couple of them. But Blazing Saddles, you've picked 2 of the greatest cowboy films of all time this evening. And this movie is, like you say, it is so politically incorrect because it was made in 1974. Yeah. So it is exactly what you'd expect from those politics, what was politically correct at that time. But it's just so endearing, so funny. You're not going to see a horse literally punched in a movie anymore.
Nope.
But back in the day, stuntman would get on and just pull the reins and let the horse get what looks like knocked out.
Correct.
Wow. This movie aged so well. And I love all the little tidbits around the film, including that amazing theme that we just heard a little bit of then. It was written and performed by a super well-known Western composer. He didn't know it was a joke film.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
it had to be presented to him as it wasn't a joke because he wouldn't have done it.
Correct.
So you listen and there's so much, there's so much genuine like affection and everything
his
in,
heart
given
and
into the
soul
thing.
and and
then to find out the kind of movie it was attached to, it has so many great elements of a lot of the Mel Brooks films, including things like when the sheriff's riding through the desert, suddenly he just rides past the people that are playing the theme of the movie.
Correct.
I think the humor from this, and I know it's trendy to hate it, but the humor for this
looks like you're
kind
keeping
of
your butt
went on
pretty
and
tight.
on.
These are looking pretty good yourself. Well,
The Family
every
Guy
day's a
has so
workout
much
when you
to
got to
this.
carry
Well,
around a
I'm
20-pound
so
python
glad
in
you
your
brought that up,
jeans.
because for me,
You and
the
your dick
evolution of
comments.
this
It's
film
fun to say
is a
them.
million
It's fun
ways
to
to
hear
go
them.
in the West.
That's why I say them.
100%.
That's why I listen.
And if we
All
look
the
back at that, we're gonna
movies,
go,
none of the
we
knowledge.
say it now.
This
How
is
did Seth MacFarlane
Dave's
get away
Video
with the stuff he
Graveyard
does?
on
That's the evolution
100.5
right there,
WOW
you know.
FM.
That's today's Blazing Saddles.
Yes, 100%.
And it still is amazing too.
I still love the movie Ways to Go in the West. The two scenes that always stick with me so much is obviously the Back to the Future crossover
Of
scene.
course.
And the block of ice scene.
Yeah, absolutely.
What
But there's
a
so
great-
much, I mean, and let's face it, it's got Neil Patrick Harris.
Yes.
So, you know. But yeah, Seth MacFarlane is amazing in that sense, and for me, that's the evolution of Blazing Saddles.
Nice. Very nice. Well, let's move on to one of your other choices. Now, this is a film that, believe it or not, has been chosen the most in the history of DVG.
Okay.
It comes up fortnightly when we have guests.
Yep.
So we are going back to the year 1990. We are talking about Martin Scorsese's game changer that is Goodfellas, running at 2 hours, 26 minutes. What can be said? Everyone loves the long shot of him walking through the restaurant, so I'll take that off you in case that's one of the things you're going to say. The music's amazing. My favourite scene is the helicopter following him when he's strung out on drugs.
Absolutely.
Why did you choose this film?
What do you mean I'm funny? How am I funny to you? What do you mean I'm funny, Dave? How am I funny?
See, that would scare me if you had done anything remotely funny this evening that could be misconstrued as funny. So,
But
nice try.
But there's so much, like Joe Pesci, Ray Liotta, like there's so many amazing performances in that.
We're talking about an actor that is filming Home Alone the same year that he filmed this film.
That's it. You know, so from, well, let's face it, it's not that different, except McAllister got away from him. That's the only difference, because I guarantee you he would have liked...
Would you hear the story that he really bit his finger at the end of Home Alone? He's still got a scar.
There you go. Don't tell me he wouldn't have liked to have got that carving knife off his mum and actually, you know, the hoof, the paw, the hoof, whatever it is,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
get the paw, the hoof.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have liked to taking McAllister's hoof off. Though.
Yes.
So, you know.
The thing about revisiting this film that to me is such a missed opportunity, it's the career we got from Ray Liotta after this film.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I absolutely loved, he had a movie that was it's called No Way Out Now. That was not the original title. It was called Escape from Absalom in Australia. It was like a Mad Maxi Island prison thing. And he was so fantastic in it. But you look at the rest of his work and, you know, you get your Operation Dumbo Drops and all these other movies. And it's such a shame because everyone else, he gives an amazing performance in this. But he just kind of didn't parlay it the way that everyone else in this movie managed to do. And, oh, man, look, this movie's perfection in the way it's cast, the way it's acted, like, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. Another favourite scene is clearly when he wakes up and his wife is on top of him with the gun.
Yeah.
I don't worry about getting killed out there. I come home to this. Like, what is it? Yeah, just so many amazing scenes in that.
When he starts dating Lorraine and he goes across the road to, goes across the road to the guy that's been, like, trying to make her do stuff on the date.
And then
smashes his
hide
face
this
in with a
for me.
bubble
And she's like, I should have been scared. Like, you know, you go, wow. But it's so cool.
Also, shout out to Anthony, who's just let us know he's tuned in on the freeway and loving your choices so far.
Excellent.
So, shout out to Anthony. Now, just looking down your list this evening, you've gone for the classics. Like, how hard was it to come up with this 10?
It is, because I've got about 14 others that could have been on the list.
Well, before we move on this evening, what are some of the honourable mentions that didn't make it?
Look, honourable mentions, 7.
Lovely.
12 Monkeys. Stand By Me.
Yep.
Deadpool, the first one. Hudson Hawk.
Right. I would like you to show me the working with Hudson Hawk, because other than when they use the song for timing, that movie's a lot to get through. That's my opinion.
I agree. I love it, though. It's one of those, because the funniest thing I've ever heard about that movie is I've actually seen Bruce Willis on, like, it wasn't the Oprah show, but it was something like that. And it wasn't long after, he's done this and that. He goes, oh, I was wearing Hudson Hawk. And someone in the audience goes, woo! And he goes, oh, so you're the one that saw it, right? So even he knows how bad it was.
I also love the Zach Galifianakis. Have you seen the Between Two Ferns with him? And he said to Bruce Willis, when you were making the whole 10 yards, was there ever a point where you stopped and just thought, this is too good. This is going to be too good.
Yeah.
I was like, that's amazing that he let that happen.
Yeah.
So Bruce Willis, obviously, he was featured in a couple of your missed suggestions.
Well, yes, he was. Because here's the thing. What I haven't got on my list anywhere, I've taken trilogies and franchises off the list because that's unfair.
Well, because second to Goodfellas is Empire Strikes Back.
Well, see, I've got the original 3 Star Wars.
Yep.
But I've got the first 3 Die Hards.
Yep.
Because Bruce Willis is Bruce Willis.
For me, it goes Die Hard 1, Die Hard 3, Last Boy Scout. That's my trilogy that I made my own.
Boy Scout is amazing in itself. That is a great film.
He pretty much is just playing John McClane in it as well, so that's why I love it.
So many of his movies are John McClane. Even the last Die Hard films aren't Die Hard films. They're just Bruce Willis being an action hero.
You are right. So much of his 90s was like, all right, where are we going to put John McClane this week?
Yeah.
Including on a speedboat with a ponytail in striking distance, which has not aged very well.
You don't like?
It's the wig and the ponytail is like
on.
made out of something that you don't. It's made out of wetsuit material, not hair.
You are being really, really harsh. Who doesn't love a maniac using a phone with "Hey there, Little Red Riding Hood" coming through it?
Yeah, but also speedboat chases. I think John Woo cornered the market in the late 90s. So,
well, let's face it.
Or sorry, Police Academy 3 cornered the market of speedboat chases.
Absolutely. So some of the other ones you want me to mention though, and you'll see that for me, any movie that's got an amazing, where even right at the end you go, I know it's not real, but is it?
Yeah.
Right, you're still not sure.
That was Scorsese's dipping his toe in the Nolan territory.
Yeah, I can see that.
I think he did it well.
But for me, that's one of those DiCaprio. He made his ability in those, and his acting is amazing for that. Just for the twist, the original Saw movie.
Okay, yep.
Because I was in the cinema seeing that one, didn't know much about it. Watched this whole thing, went, okay, I'm on board with this. And when you get to that scene, when the guy's cut his arm from going, and the guy gets up off the floor that's been there the whole time, I audibly gasped and went, get fucked. Right.
Because so much of that first film, the visceral grossness of the body's blood, like that played so into the grim, visceral part of the storytelling that when it turned out the swerve was that he wasn't dead and it wasn't blood, it was like, what?
Exactly right. So that swerve, that got me every time. But, I mentioned DiCaprio. So Wolf of Wall Street, again, there's a couple of reasons for that.
The fact he didn't win an Oscar for that film is the biggest crime in history in a long time.
Definitely one of them. So his performance in that, Jonah Hill in that's amazing. Plus it's got one of my favourite guys from one of my favourite podcasts in there. Is Henry Zebrowski. So, for me...
Sea Otter.
So I've actually met Henry.
I've seen a photo that made me insanely jealous because I was at that same show. And funnily enough, you have not only met the cast of last podcast on the left.
Correct.
You have essentially produced an episode because you handing Sean's book to those guys. They did an episode on Adelaide the following week.
Yeah, so absolutely. So the funny thing about that was their tour manager, shout out to Simon, I had met at a previous gig that I was actually comparing, and he and I started talking, and I said, I'm a wrestler, and he's, oh my God. So we got talking. We got to the end of that. He goes, thanks for your work tonight. I said, hey, so when you come back to Adelaide? So he goes, I've got this tour coming back in, whenever it was, this thing called The Last Podcast. I said, you have not? And I'm like, he goes, I'm like, oh my God, yes, I know them. And
that's my all-time favourite podcast.
Absolutely. I'm like, you will love Ben. He's huge and loves wrestling. He is amazing. He said, fine. When they come, you let me know. I'll get you in. So I got a VIP pass. I was hanging out in the green room with the boys before the show.
Yep.
So I was there for about an hour talking to all three of them. And actually, had great conversation. I love Marcus just for the straight guy. Ben is just a good, cool guy.
Yeah.
And Henry and I actually started riffing and joking with each other. I'm like, I actually had to pinch myself to go, hang on, this is
amazing.
This is awesome. And then got to chat with them afterwards and got photos and stuff. And yeah, they are cool. And Henry and I actually message each other now and then.
Oh wow!
So yeah, I'll make you insanely jealous a little bit later there, Dave.
Nice. Let's get back into the music before we continue. This is 100.5 WOW FM.
And if someone comes up to you with an attitude, you say, eat me. And if you want to shine them on, it's hasta la vista, baby.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Yeah, or later, dickwad.
You're listening to Dave's Video Graveyard on 100.5 WOW FM.
It is Tyler Daniels, The Difference. The 10 favourite films of all time, kind of, because it's a subjective choice. We are travelling back to 1997, where two on-the-rise actors decided that they would write a movie. And those two were Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. And the film they wrote was Good Will Hunting, a movie that if you want to love some Robin Williams and also cry, you should definitely revisit because it holds up. Why did you pick this movie?
This movie, legitimately, if I happen to be flicking through channels and I flick over and that's playing, 2 hours of my life is gone. I'm watching it every time. It doesn't matter. There was so much about that story that just gets me. When it came out, the timing of it. And there is so much that I actually relate to in Matt Damon's character, so Will. More than anything, never actually studied or did anything and somehow managed to come in and get my grades and ace tests and somehow...
Is that because you're a janitor? Is that the main reason, though?
No, but I've cleaned up a lot of turds, so let's put it that way. No, it's just there's so much about it, like the underdog, because he just didn't... Look, he's got a backstory, but he didn't try, and he's got reason for not trying, but then, you get past that and you get that unbelievable... the performance by Robin Williams and then Matt together, when you get that ongoing relationship between those two as well.
Definitely.
So there's so much greatness in that, but just the story itself is so good.
And Gus Van Sant is known as an amazing director, and I think the ending of this film is a perfect example of show, don't tell.
Yeah.
Because earlier in the movie we've said Ben Affleck's dream is for, even though it'll hurt him, that Will leave. One day he'll go to pick him up and he just won't be there.
So good.
So that's set, that's tentpoled in the start of the film, and then right at the end it plays out, and it's just, a modern day movie or a lesser director might put a scroll up on and explain, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
Whereas this was a perfect example. And talk about chemistry, like having Robin Williams go up against Matt Damon, who was on the rise. He had no business being as good as he was in this, Robin Williams. And still to this day, all the scenes about him reminiscing about his wife and getting angry at thing just... Oh, man.
So much.
They're tear-jerking.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, and... Minnie Driver's not harsh to look at as well, let's be honest. But you're right. The chemistry, I think, of the whole character, and Ben Affleck takes, and rightfully, a fair hiding through some of his performances, but even he plays his role immaculately as the offsider for Matt Damon as well. So, that for me, there is so much to like about that movie. It still holds up. It's probably one of those ones that's kind of a coming of age for me at that time, and seeing that and going,
And still, I also really appreciate in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where they're filming Good Will Hunting 2 hunting season. And it's just so meta because Ben Affleck is playing Will.
Yep.
And Matt Damon's playing the other character. And it's just amazing the way they do that.
And it's interesting you bring that up because the other one that this movie does not get its due whatsoever, but it's the Kevin Smith crossover, is Dogma.
Yes.
For me... That is probably my favourite Kevin Smith movie.
I got into Kevin Smith through Mallrats.
Yeah.
Went back to Clerks.
Yeah.
But then Dogma was the greatest.
Yeah, I agree. Because Kevin Smith was so clever in the way he used religion against itself to pull itself apart. So for me, that's... Anytime you can use someone's argument against them, I'm on board.
And also, it does not hurt when it came out that it had Selma Hayek in it and The Age That I Was. Just saying.
Oh, look, I'm with you. So, but that's Good Will Hunting, as I said, stands up for me as absolute classic every day of the week.
Nice. Now, the next film, it's been one of those good examples of a movie where you have to separate the real life. Like when you enjoy a Mel Gibson film, you have to separate real life from the fictional world because we are talking about 1995's The Usual Suspects, which is carried on the back of an amazing performance by Kevin Spacey, who's a terrible human in real life, but we are celebrating this film rather than the actor himself. Even Bryan Singer's questionable now, but anyway, moving right along. This movie is insanely good. It spawned... I talk about this on the show all the time, game changers, the like of Fight Club, the likes of The Matrix. Movies that come along, did their own thing, and then everything that came after it had to either copy, borrow, or do better than, or not even bother. Like, why even bother putting a movie out? And The Usual Suspects has one of... Like you said, you love movies with a swerve, and this is the example of a well-executed ending, if ever there was one. You get a different outlook on this film if you ever manage to find the outtakes that I've watched where Benicio del Toro keeps farting in the lineup scene.
Yeah.
And it ended up, they were all so angry with each other. But it was one of those things where it was funny, then it wasn't funny anymore and they were all angry. But then it come around as funny again. And like they used a lot of it, particularly when Stephen Baldwin does the silly line read and they all crack up. That was in the middle of like that, like that whole those takes and stuff. A stellar cast. And funnily enough, because one of the greatest performances in it is from Gabriel Byrne.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think he ever managed to do anything as good as this.
I'd agree. I'd agree with that. And
he did a lot of those fighting the devil movies in the late 90s.
Yeah. But, you know, Stephen Baldwin didn't do anything better than this either, let's be honest.
I really love Fled with him and Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, but it's still...
Biodome. Biodome, Usual Suspects. They both come up in the same breath a lot.
Yeah,
Except not at all.
Yeah, exactly. I think you mentioned it before, and I love a great twist, a massive swerve at the end. And for me, name a better one you've ever seen. The way it's done. And the thing was, it's there right from the start. It's there in front of you, and you know it's coming. And by the time... When you see that iconic scene of just his feet shuffling along and suddenly that foot turns, you already know you've been had.
It is an amazing film, much like you say with your Sixth Sense, your Fight Club, any movie that ends on a big, strong twist. Rewatchability, when you know what's happening, is still magical because there are so many little hints where they look at the camera and wink and give you finger guns that you do not pick up on the first time.
Agreed. There is so much, and as you said, the cast, everyone in that is amazing. Such a good story, great plot, and for me, that is, again, the bad guy wins, the best plot twist ever, and everyone played. And you know, it's really sad that it's Kevin Spacey as we know him now because his performance in American Beauty, his performance in Horrible Bosses, like, Seven. I mean, again, the villain wins, right? Do you know what I mean?
On a lesser note, I watched See No Evil, Hear No Evil on the weekend for the first time since I was a kid and loved that movie. Kevin Spacey is the young bad guy in that movie.
There you
I'm
go.
like, dang it.
I wouldn't have, so I didn't know that. But that's what I mean. It's such a shame that you have to separate the art from the artist.
Yeah.
However, just purely on the art, so good.
100%. And you get that now because we are learning that everyone's pretty much a bad guy. Like, unfortunately, the world we live in, we're finding out... It's a great thing that we're finding out they are terrible people.
Of course.
But how does that apply to their body of work? And so you get the Woody Allens of the world and all these other actors and directors and all these kind of things. Correct. And it's really difficult. But, like you say, unfortunately, in so many of Spacey's films, he's the best part of it.
Of course. And this...
Even Baby Driver.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Even in that, he's amazing in that too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, The Usual Suspects, for all of those reasons, it as you said, it changed the game. It took every trope, gave them to you, and then you realised, oh, they actually gave us something different while giving us that.
Yes, and I think that links directly and very well to your next choice, which from 1992, we are talking about Reservoir Dogs. And that did exactly the same thing because pretty much every element of this film became a trope when it comes to the crime, heist, double crossing and, undercover cops. It was all here. And I must admit, and I have to admit this, I saw Reservoir Dogs for the first time in 2018. So by the time I saw it, everything in this movie was such a trope or a cliche, or The Simpsons had done it to death, that it didn't have the impact that it really should have. Because Pulp Fiction was the big be-all, end-all film for me with Quentin Tarantino. However, moving on, I love the work he did writing with, like, The Hateful Eight's my favourite Tarantino film.
Okay.
True Romance is my favourite film that he wrote.
For sure.
But Reservoir Dogs never kind of hit the stride that it should have for me, because obviously this was the world's introduction to him as a director. It is so effective and so amazing. Perfect casting all around. There's no one in this movie that's not towing their weight and worth their weight in gold.
Agreed.
But like I said, when I first got to it, it was such a cliche. I'm like, oh, well, I know what's going to happen.
So here's the thing, and this I said earlier on, we'll put a pin in this and come back to it. This is the VHS tape that I had. Now, I was, just by sheer pure coincidence at the time, a friend of my mum was working in cinemas, and they had got this VHS tape given to them before it actually got to the cinema. And she's like, oh, yeah, whatever, and gave it to mum and said, oh, you know, I might enjoy watching it, right? I've got this tape that isn't, and like, so there's no, I've seen nothing about it. I know nothing whatsoever. I put this tape in. Me and a couple of my mates were sitting around watching, and I just watched this thing. And at the start, I'm like, it starts with these guys running down the street, and I'm like, hang on, this jumbled story makes no sense. I'm like, what is this about? And it just builds and builds, and I'm like, oh my God, this is honestly the greatest thing I've ever seen. To the point where, you know, I know a lot of people talk about Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction's great.
Oh, well,
it's secondary.
I get why you're saying that, because Reservoir Dogs was the first time Tarantino had used non-linear storytelling.
Absolutely.
And really effectively. But because I'd seen it first in Pulp Fiction,
right.
That's what I mean about this movie. Take nothing away from this movie.
Correct.
My personal experience to it is all the tropes were tropes by the time I got to it.
It's such a shame, because you talk about the tropes, so there's so many elements of this. You've got the non-linear storytelling, as you said. You have got extended scenes played out where there is no cuts, there's no breaks.
Real life dialogue.
Amazing stuff. So, and I love the small things if you watch long enough. Harvey Keitel never actually lights his cigarette.
Yeah, right.
He attempts his lighter about 4 times, can't do it, doesn't actually get it, has to get it lit by someone else, and eventually puts it in his mouth. It's not lit. Like, there's so much about it. But Tim Roth's character that you think is going to be the best thing, who's your favourite character out of Reservoir Dogs?
Steve Buscemi.
Great, not the best. Who do you think my favourite character is?
Michael Madsen, who could not get a role after this movie because he was so troubling and menacing that people were like, no one's going to go see a movie with him in it because he's such a horrible human.
Mr. Blonde.
And technically, it's accused, allegedly, that he leaked the script of Hateful Eight.
Look, I can't comment
Just
on that.
saying, just saying.
That's completely different. So, to the point, Mr. Blonde is one of my all-time favourite characters, just because so cool, but so psychotically menacing underneath, and you just know at a moment's notice he's going to kick off.
There is no one in our generation that he'll steal his wheel, stuck in the middle with you, and doesn't picture his face.
Of course. But hang on, best line he delivers. Are you going to bark all day, little doggy, or are you going to bite? Yeah. That is still, to this day, the message tone from my text messages on my phone.
Nice.
That is it. Every time you get a text message, that comes up.
Did you ever happen to see, it's unrelated, but I'm a massive Saturday Night Live fan, and there was an episode hosted after Pulp Fiction come out of, hosted by Travolta, and it was Welcome Back, Kotter.
Amazing.
But it was done in the style of Reservoir Dogs.
Oh, no, I haven't seen it, but that's awesome.
Then they got, like, all these people to do cameos. Steve Buscemi showed up, all these people. And it is the most perfect crossover that you'll ever find.
That is great.
So if you can find that, I really highly suggest that, because it is a beautiful companion piece. This one, I don't think, like, because Tarantino obviously worked on the formula he already had.
Yeah.
I think this, like I was saying with Game Changer, you can go and watch Reservoir Dogs, then go and watch what, go look at Guy Ritchie's Lock, Stock and Smoking Barrels or Snatch. It is taking the Reservoir Dogs blueprint.
Definitely.
And just, doing a little bit of a spin on it, but not too much of a spin.
Nope.
And it's so good. It's amazingly casted, like you said, this film. Because Tarantino really wanted a lot of big name actors that weren't necessarily at their heights.
Yep.
So he wanted to find actors that he knew that could pull it off, but also the movies weren't being sold on their, directly on their backs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The other thing that when you watch a Tarantino film, you know what you're going to expect with the dialogue aspect. But have a look at the technically the opening scene. You see all of the guys in the diner at the start, and that dialogue scene that just goes back and forth and talk around, and it's about Madonna and like a virgin and what that actually means. Who cares about the topic, but their ability to throw that dialogue back and forth and just go and go and go, and that long extended scene of it that winds up with Steve Buscemi's I don't tip like. It's so great. Like, that is the blueprint for all of it. And then you see Tim Roth later on do his monologue of what's his backstory and tells the whole thing, and it's just so great.
You get a character that spends pretty much the entire movie dying of a stomach wound. Like, it's intense.
But then, obviously, the twist is, yes, he is an undercover, and you know that, but then the cop that's just had his ears cut off knows he's actually an undercover. So there's twists on twists. And at the end, no one gets away. So, like, the bad guys don't win, but no one wins. So... great ending.
Nice. Now, we'll jump on to your next movie. We are going back to 1994 to talk about a movie that failed in its theatrical run. There was all these other movies released. So 1994, we're talking Forrest Gump. We're talking The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, Ace Ventura. All these amazing movies. The world was a little bit burned out when it come to epic dramas.
Mm-hmm.
However, one director that was doing his directorial debut almost lost his job working on this film because Tom Cruise wanted to star in this movie and he did not want to work with a first-time actor. He was too big and too important to work with a first-time actor. So much to the film company's dismay, Tom Cruise left the production. However, that's when we managed to get Tim Robbins on board. We are talking about The Shawshank Redemption, a film directed by Frank Darabont, who has created 4 of the greatest things set in a prison ever, because you've got The Shawshank, you've got The Green Mile, we've also got, I'm trying to remember what the other one was. I know that season 3 of Walking Dead that's set in the prison.
Okay.
That's right, when they got rid of him. Frank Darabont's the man behind the greatest Stephen King adaptation of all time, not counting Shawshank, which to me is The Mist. And this movie is perfection. You were mentioning earlier that whenever you change channel and Good Will Hunting's on, doesn't matter where it's up to, you're sitting.
Same.
That's what Shawshank is.
Same, absolutely. Yeah. And it's for all those reasons, and it is one of those ones that, and this is one of those few that is dead set drama the whole way through, and pretty gritty, intense, and still has moments of light in that comedy aspect, that come through. And as a supporting actor, how good is Morgan Freeman throughout that? And
this is character actor heaven, because you're not only getting Morgan Freeman, you're getting one of the world's greatest bad guys. We're talking about Clancy Brown from Highlander or Starship Troopers, which we'll be covering on this week's DVG podcast, so check that out. But yeah, man, you also got Death himself, William Sadler from Die Hard 2 / Bill and Ted. This movie is delightful, and I reckon I've watched it in the last month. And it's one of those movies, if you haven't seen it, give it a fortnight, just flick through free-to-air TV, and it'll be on.
You hope so anyway. But again, it's one of those ones where Tim Robbins' character wasn't the bad guy. Andy wasn't the bad guy, but he kind of had to adapt to being a bad guy to fit in, to then out-bad guy the bad guys to get out.
Yes.
So the good guy won by being the bad guy, again, by outwitting them. And let's face it, how cool is the twist at the end when he throws the pebble and you go, oh, for God's sakes, like, really? Like, did not see it. Like, amazing.
Have you ever seen and I know there's nothing cool than talking about memes on the radio, but there's the meme that's the alternative ending of Shawshank Redemption, and it's Andy's only just got inside of the poster, so when the warden puts his finger through, it's like goes into his butt. It's delightful.
Amazing.
It is meme talk here on DVG.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's our new show. Oh, man, Brooks was here. Still makes me sad.
But that's the thing. There's so much amazing stuff. But even, and I can't, the young guy who fails his GED gets and then actually has information that can get Andy off, and of course gets double crossed, goes out in the yard, shot.
Yep.
So at every turn, Andy is shut down, and Andy comes up with the greatest plot just to get out and F everyone over.
Man, what a fantastic movie. Everyone in it is fantastic. And it's one of those films where you see the actors in this film, then when you see them in something else, your mind goes back to this.
Of course.
Because it's like...
Well, is this where the birth of the Morgan Freeman just, overdub voice.
Surely
of
it had to be his first voiceover.
He narrates everything now, and I swear this is where it has to have come from.
And
here.
like I said, it's so trendy to hate Family Guy, but their version of Shawshank Redemption is amazing.
Yeah.
I still love, because like one of the opening lines with Morgan Freeman is like, it wasn't but like a month before he said 2 words to me. In the Family Guy, he's like, vagina boob. It's like, nicely done.
So good.
What a great film.
Indeed.
Honestly, that is a fantastic choice. We should jump back into some music. Don't forget, you can join in the conversation. Jump on our social medias. This is 100.5 WOW FM.
Cycles? Or?
They look like psychos? Is that what they look like? They were vampires. Psychos do not explode when sunlight hits them. I don't give up how crazy they are.
Talking movies on the radio. This is Dave's Video Graveyard on 100.5 WOW FM.
Only after dark.
This is Dave's Video Graveyard for your Monday night. Any guesses what the next movie chosen by Tyler Daniels might be? The Pixies. It could be anything. But it is, of course, 1999. One of the greatest years in film, in my opinion. We are talking about Fight Club from David Fincher, the guy that got messed over making Aliens 3. Also made amazing movies with Brad Pitt, including Seven, and a whole heap of other amazing stuff. Why did you pick this game changer?
This was another one, and like as I said, for me, these movies are impact movies to me at the time. And I remember going again, saw this in the cinema, didn't really know much about what it was. A mate of mine said, "Hey, let's go watch a movie." I'm like, "Cool, let's do this." Went in and watched this movie, and I found that this was kind of like the element of 2 parts of this movie. Like the first part is, it's kind of like it was a recruitment video for like anarchy. Like,
Yeah.
You're like, I'm in. This is sign me up. I want to be part of it. And the second half of the movie is, and this is what happens when you do, right? So,
but isn't it funny the amount of people that did not take away that lesson? Much like when Joker came out, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, anarchy! Like let's do it."
Yeah, no, actually, look at the character development. That said, I still walked out of there going, "I'm ready to burn everything to the ground."
100%.
Like, and that's the thing. So for me, again, it's a great swerve. Again, when you see him sitting in that hotel room talking to himself, realizing it's actually just me, right? Again, that's that reveal again. Perfect work. Great performances by both Ed Norton and Brad Pitt. Really well played. And let's face it, who wouldn't have wanted to visit Helena Bonham Carter in that dingy little motel room of hers? But so much of that is just so well put together. And as I said, his name is Robert Paulson. All of those elements just came together.
Meatloaf's Mad Rack.
Absolutely.
What a movie.
Absolutely. So great.
That's it. And I can only imagine how much the lip scar tattoo went up after this movie came out.
Of course.
Did you get around to reading? Because Chuck obviously wrote this, but he also did the follow-up book, like a follow-up to Fight Club. And I feel like this is a movie that I would be angry if they made a sequel or continued the story, because it's a perfect lightning in a bottle. Like, it's a bottle episode in a perfect way.
I agree. It's one of those movies I said before, the best movies that don't need sequels in that sense, because you get the story, you wrap the story up, and it tells exactly what you needed to know about that time, moment, event, situation. And you're right. Fight Club for that is one of those, because for me, the sequel to that is whatever you do once you leave that cinema.
Yes.
You know what I mean? The sequel isn't on the screen. The sequel is what you actually take away from that. What are you going to do with that information? What are you going to do with that experience? What are you going to do to civilization? How are you going to impact that? So for me, I agree.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny, like, another thing that makes this a game changer is watching it. It has almost like a green color wash to the color correction. Like, a lot of the scenes look really washed out and green, and that just became the staple of, all right, let's make high concept movie.
Yeah.
And they throw that in. So every streetscape, everything just had that dingy green look to it. Everything was dirty because, like, obviously with the soap factory that they live in being so filthy, that became your, like, aesthetic for a lot of movies and
Correct.
stuff. So, like, every background, like, a good example I give of this is you look at stills from this movie and you look at stills from movies like The Book of Eli, and they're color corrected the exact same color, and it's like, oh, you just, it's so similar to this. Yeah, I don't think many of the movies that this inspired did it as well, because this is the last time that we received a big movie. Well, I can see the the connectivity in your brain of The Usual Suspects to Fight Club. Like, those endings make the movie.
Yeah, for sure.
And like we said with The Usual Suspects, rewatching this movie, you 100% get more the second time round than you did the first, because you're in on the joke second time round.
Indeed. For me as well, and I'm a big one, if it's done right, a really good fourth wall break.
Yep.
And, Henry Hill in Goodfellas, like Ray Liotta, does a really great fourth wall break a couple of times. And in this one here, even when Edward Norton's talking to that, and he's talking about the process of the cigarette burn to change over the reels.
Yes.
And they literally do it, and obviously the timing of you can see Brad Pitt just point up to the corner, there it is, and when he talks about, the concept of cutting a big cock in there, right?
Yeah.
And then you watch right at the end as the credits are rolling, and they slip in one still of one great big cock, and it's like, well played. Like, I not a tip of the hat for that.
And even in a lot of the insomnia scenes of, like, the narrator at the start, Tyler Durden flashes up at least 10 or so times throughout the movie.
Absolutely.
Anyone that's not a fan of Jared Leto, you get to see Angel Face, played by Jared Leto's face, completely smashed in. Oh, man, it's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
And like you say, everyone wanted to be in Fight Club, and then when it changes to Project Mayhem's when you're supposed to learn that you don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And obviously, the world changed in 2001, so we weren't going to get an urban terrorism film that glorified this urban terrorism after 2001. So it's lucky we got it when we did.
Yeah, and it's one of those lightning in the bottle. It's perfect timing, perfect situation, just all came together. Because as you said, come 2001, you would not have had this movie made.
That is right. Well, we're going to go to our last song before the end of the show, and we'll come back with the last two films.
Nowhere to run to, baby. Warriors, come out to play. Warriors, come out to play.
This is DVG on WOWFM.
I know you're no good for me.
It is 100.5 WOWFM. There we heard from Me First and the Gimme Gimmes, Coming to America. And the reason we played that is because the next choice from 1988, Tyler Daniels has chosen Coming to America, directed by John Landis, who you don't let direct helicopters, but you do let direct Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall. Why did you pick this movie?
Well, before we get to that, I'm glad you put this in, because it's probably a nice little sort of sorbet palate cleanser between where we've gone and where we're going to. But Coming to America, it's the quintessential Eddie Murphy movie. And I mean, he's done some great stuff. He's done some questionable stuff, let's be honest. However, this to me is himself and Arsenio Hall not doing one great performance, both of them doing multiple great performances throughout. None of their characters are dull. None of them don't add. It is great. There is so much to like about this. The comedy is good. The story is just fun to go on. So much grandeur as well when you're talking about, right from the start, the whole big procession, the wedding procession that's called off, and Zamunda, all of that stuff is just amazing.
And obviously, we're getting a second film in the franchise coming out in March.
Yep.
Which is amazing in its own right, because whilst filming Beverly Hills Cop 3, directed by Landis, he had a massive fallout because Eddie Murphy wasn't paying his entourage at the time.
Right.
And someone from his entourage told John Landis, and John Landis said, you need to make sure he pays you, you need to go to the union, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And Eddie Murphy found out about it. So they had a massive fight, and after finishing filming the movie, Eddie Murphy was asked if he'd ever work with John Landis again, and he said there'd be more chance of Vic Morrow working with John Landis than me. And famously, Vic Morrow is the actor that passed away during the Twilight Zone movie directed by John Landis.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, that is the most brutal thing I've ever heard an actor say to a director. But lo and behold, 2021 rolls around, and we're getting Coming to America too. This movie is stylistically perfect, start to finish. It's one-liner after one-liner. It is so quotable. I was having an argument with someone recently. They were saying about how what are some of the most quotable movies of all time? And I'm like, well, you know, if you think modern, you get like the likes of Anchorman or Step Brothers.
Mhm.
But then when it comes to the 80s, Coming to America, like you say, some of the lines in this movie, you just have to say once. And if they know, they know.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's done so well. And I'm really excited to see where they go with it in the next one. But, you know, the casting of everyone involved in this, including James Earl Jones as the king, it's just so good. Yeah, man, this movie is perfect.
Yeah, it's great. And look, just a quick sidebar that you mentioned there. Shout out to the fact that I have not managed to shoehorn any Will Ferrell films in here, and I'm a huge Will Ferrell buff, and there are so many great ones from him as well. You are right. This movie, for me, is perfect top to bottom. The casting is amazing. The one-liners, as you said, all the characters are great. You know, we were talking off during the song about the Randy Watson sexual chocolate aspect of it, but there is so much. I mean, as you said, you've got James Earl Jones, Darth Vader. You've got Mr. McDowell, who's from Good Times. Like, you know, so many great performances throughout this whole thing. One thing as well I love is the cameo from Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes, tries to rob McDowell's.
Absolutely, so good. So, but the one-liners, as you said, you know, we're talking about if you are of that ilk, all you have to say is "Soul Glow." People know what that is.
The royal penis is clean.
The royal penis is clean. You know, there are amazing one-liners. The whole, just, you know, walking down the street of Queens, shut the F up. And, you know, just so many. The scene with the old guys in the barbershop when they're fighting over Joe
Cassius
Lewis.
Clay.
Yeah, his mama named
Still to this day, if I hear Cassius Clay, I think of that old diatribe.
His mama named him Clay. I'm gonna call him Clay. Yeah.
That is so funny.
Yeah, there is such a good film, top to bottom. Still holds, one of those ones still holds up, still great. As I say, look, for me, as good as Eddie Murphy was in that, you know, Arsenio Hall was right there with him, matching him character for character the whole way through.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, he went down the talk show route, and Eddie became one of the biggest movie stars of all time. So I'm hoping they can bring the energy back, because obviously they've lived very different lives since then.
Yeah.
They had a massive fallout after this movie and didn't talk for many years. So I'm hoping the magic's still there.
Well, time apparently heals most things. We'll see.
Here's hoping.
We'll see.
Now, the final film you have chosen this evening, it is time to get into film nerd territory, more so than we have this evening. You have picked a movie that is considered one of the greatest horror movies of all time. I just think it's a cool psychological movie. There's so much to do with other things going on in the world, but we are talking about 1980s The Shining from Stanley Kubrick. Why did you pick this movie?
It is one of those ones that is an impact movie again. You know, I'll be honest, I haven't seen it for so long. I need to go back because I am sketchy on my memory of it. I just know the impact it had on me, and there's some iconic scenes, some iconic themes. You know, the performance by, you know, Jack Nicholson alone is amazing. You add on top of that Kubrick and everything he brings in, his storytelling and his ability.
He's working Shelley Duvall to the ground, making her do like hundreds upon hundreds of takes.
Yeah, right. You know, but you said something that's really interesting there, the psychological aspect of it. For me, I agree, and throughout all of this, there's some horror stuff, there's some violent stuff, but the psychological aspect of getting to that point before the violence ever happens, for me, is where the true mastery comes in, because anyone can do violence and it's easy to do violence, but for a reason, for a cause, and a build-up that makes sense psychologically, that is absolutely, as you said, for me, that is absolutely a key to this.
Awesome. And obviously it became, because a lot of Kubrick films were, Kubrick was one of those directors that was every other director's favourite director.
Yeah.
And so many of his things are borrowed for other things, and of course, The Simpsons have troped this movie to death.
Of course.
Over and over. I still love, because it is so true to the actual story, is the part where the shinning, where groundskeeper Willie flies all the way on the plane, gets killed instantly, much like Scatman Crothers does in the film. And it's just, that is true.
It is. It's so good. And for me, there's the added element to that, because I'm a really big fan. I like a good conspiracy theory. And for those who have read up or know about it, there's a really good documentary out there that talks about the concept of Was Stanley Kubrick involved in faking the moon landing, and is he telling us all about it through The Shining? So
because you get the likes of like Danny Torrance is wearing the moon landing knitted jumper.
Yeah.
So many nods to it.
Absolutely, the room numbers, etc., and how they play it out, and what they do, and the positioning of certain things in certain scenes, and that to me is just another level again. Now, I don't necessarily know how accurate, real, true it is, but it's another element for me which just is on top of an already amazing film.
So you've never spent a night in a hotel room with a man in a bunny suit?
I was the man in the suit.
You're in the suit. Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
We're an equal opportunist show.
Absolutely.
Well, that is your 10 films that you've chosen this evening. Thank you so much, because honestly, it is so refreshing that you've gone for movies that meant a lot to you.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was cool that you could tell us about each one of them. Where can people check out what you've got going on, dude?
Well, obviously, Riot City Wrestling, and for those listening locally, obviously we have a back-to-back double header this weekend. My understanding, however, is...
Much like the movie with Jared Leto. I'm trying to think what it's called. Requiem for a Dream. You've got a double header this weekend.
Absolutely. So the 16th and 17th. However, my understanding is both shows are now sold out.
Of course.
However, I believe live stream will be up. If not, check out the Riot City YouTube channel, etc., or the webpage will have all the details there. Me personally, Tyler Daniels _ The Difference across Instagram, Facebook, all of that. Feel free to send me a message. Man, there's a chance I may respond. Likelihood is I won't give you the time of day, but you can try your luck.
That's it. And tell us 5 local or interstate wrestlers that you're going to beat by the end of 2021.
Only 5.
Only 5.
Oh, goodness.
The 5 that you'll break a sweat for.
5 I'll break a sweat for. That's a very good question. Chris Basso is one that is an interesting one because, as I said, we have that storied history. It's gone back so far. Who else? I'd like to get a win back.
You should go out in mimic garb. That'd just be poetic.
Yeah, I'd happily do that. I'm okay. Who doesn't like a leather skirt and a white face? I'd probably want to get... I owe probably Big Bill Redshaw a payback, so we'll throw him on the list. Who else? Look, Dave, it's an open thing, mate. Whoever wants to walk up, please do. Try your best, and then don't be sad when you fail.
Nice, very nice. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been DVG. Now, I've dug very deep in the vault this week, and I've come across a very interesting song. Turns out, after the height of Terminator 2, Edward Furlong decided that he was going to become a musician. So this is one of the first singles he released. It's a cover of Echo and the Bunnymen. Well, essentially a cover of The Doors. Anyway, this is People Are Strange from Edward Furlong. The best way to go out here on DVG.